Joey from Antic Button Gaming. Today we're going to be talking about what I think the Warhammer show needs to really do to succeed, right? And let's just talk about succeeding real quick. Well, what does that mean, right? Because let's say you have a really great show and it just doesn't get marketed. Well, that's going to fail, right? So then it's not succeeding. Same thing if you have a really bad show, right? But more importantly, this is the most opportune time to have exposure to the franchise. Look at what Space Marine 2 managed to do for the popularity of Warhammer 40,000, right? Whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to interpretation. But generally, I believe the more eyes you have on a product, the more you're going to get people interested in it. And then, from there, we can really start to build something really big, which is going to be really cool, right? So, of course, keeping true to the core identity of the series is unbelievably important, but so is getting in new blood, because if you don't have new blood, then the series just dies, right? So ultimately, Games Workshop's goal for this is going to be to get more eyes on the franchise, right? So it's effectively a really big, expensive marketing ad, if you look at it, right? So, a lot of people are saying, like, hey, we should go with, Dan Abnett Eisenhorn, like, Eisenhorn's fantastic, it's like a slice of the really big universe, right? And I would consider this to be like the Andor to, Star Wars, right? Like, it's a much more character-focused book, where it focuses on Eisenhorn, right? Compared to, the Star Wars and, your Jedi and your Luke Skywalkers. So I would make the argument something like Hell's Reach is actually better, because if the whole point is to get new people into the franchise, well, getting them to know what the franchise is actually about is unbelievably critically important, right? And I don't think Eisenhorn is the onboarding that everybody, gives it credit to. Like, maybe for a book, yeah, but a TV show where we're kind of trying to get people into, this, it's, Hell's Reach does a much better job of getting people accustomed to, Warhammer 40,000, the big battles, than Eisenhorn does, right? And it doesn't have to be Hell's Reach exactly, but your typical, Space Marine battle book, your Imperium is up against, the mutant, the heretic, the alien, because, what is Warhammer 40,000, right? The Imperium of mankind in the far future of the 41st millennium is beset on all sides by the alien, the mutant, and the heretic. And it has to, survive, right? And to do that, they have boundless legions of soldiers, the Imperial Guard, and their greatest defenders of them all are the Space Marines, right? So on and so forth. Because that is ultimately, because this is the idea that Games Workshop wants to sell you. This big picture here is what, people think of when they think Warhammer 40,000, two big armies going at it, right? So that way they can sell you, two big armies to play with, right? Because that's ultimately, what Warhammer is, right? The setting of Warhammer is the grim darkness of the far future. What Warhammer 40,000 actually is a bunch of tiny plastic toy soldiers that you put on your shelf or you play games with. I play games with mine. Some people just put them on the shelf. That's totally fine, right? As long as those models are getting sold, Games Workshop is happy, right? And, well, why do we need to, get people accustomed to this over this, right? Because, please, oop. I'm doing a technical error. To this, right? Good old Eisenhorn. Well, so first and foremost, load graph I found. This is the average retention ship for a TV show. It's not like a movie, right? Because you spent money on a movie, you're probably gonna sit down and at least watch it to about halfway through. Whereas with a TV show, a good chunk of the people only watch this is just for demonstration purposes. Some shows have horrific drop-off. Some shows have very little drop-off. But typically, on average, they lose about a quarter of viewers, right? Some shows are even heavier. They'll lose up to 50% of viewers, right? But that's probably because the show isn't very good. So even a good quality show, right? Which, to be blunt, I don't think Warhammer 40,000, especially under Amazon, is going to be a great quality show, right? They just don't have a good track record adapting stuff, or at least having it like be popular and do well. I love the Tick series they did, Rings of Power has issues. So unfortunately, like if we're looking at like drop off and stuff, that would actually be a really great example of an Amazon produced show that had some pretty not good drop off. But you're looking at about, even for a good quality show, a 25% drop off, right? And that's not great, And then by the end of the series, you're looking at 40% drop off, in some shows cases, like up to like 60% drop off sometimes. It can get brutal, right? So let's say we have 80 million people tune in to watch Warhammer 40,000. Awesome. 20 million people drop it. Okay, how many of those 20 million people, because like, a quarter, how many of those 20 million people actually got through the first 10 minutes? Like, the first 10 minutes of the show is going to be make or break. And do you want the first 10 minutes of the show to be Eisenhorn, talking to an Inquisitor in a room, right? Like crime drama, right? Or do you want it to be, like zooming in on the planet Armageddon? I keep using Armageddon, but that's hot and fresh, right? All the kids like Armageddon. So we're going big on Armageddon, right? The orcs and the Imperium and like big robots beating the crap out of each other, like which one gets the point of like this is Warhammer 40,000 across, right? Sitting in a room talking and like being like a cool crime drama, which would be really cool. I think Eisenhorn would be a fantastic like second or third show, right? I don't think it should be the first show to get people on board. I think this should be, because this is going to be, it's kind of almost like false advertising, if that makes sense, right? And it's like, well, clearly, like, if they sit through, like, the first 20 minutes and they start seeing it, they'll understand it's a big space opera thing, right? Well, so then we're getting into, what I like to affectionately call clueless parent syndrome, or some people call it the Nintendo mom, It's like, it doesn't matter what it is, it's all a Nintendo, right? And, like, my dad was great with this stuff. He knew who all my favorite clone troopers were. He knew who the Master Chief was. But, like, some parents are kind of clueless. Like, you'd go over to your friend's house, and they'd be like, oh, are you playing the Halo? And you'd be like, yeah, Bradley's mom, we're playing the Halo. Or so on and so forth, like, yeah, I'm over at Chad's place. We're playing the Nintendo. They quite want to be able to understand it. My son likes the green one. Is this the green one? It's like, yeah, that's the Master Chief. Right? And I'm like, oh, well, why is it important to get, what we're gonna call normies, normal people, right? Like, I consume a lot of what I will refer to as nerd culture. It's video games, comic books, like, I can name you, like, a lot of really obscure Batman super villains. Like, does that make me better than the normie? God, no. The normie's having, like, a real life. But, once again, like, the normies are gonna be, like, so as an example, let's say you have, like, a normie sister or brother or whatever, and their niece is really into, or nephew is really into, Warhammer 40,000, right? And so they sit down and they watch, like, the first 10 episodes of Eisenhorn, and they're like, so they're really into a detective show, yeah? And you're like, well, actually, Eisenhorn's like an Inquisitor, and, like, it doesn't matter. If the first 30 minutes of this TV show could be telling you in depth exactly everything the Inquisition does. Nintendo mom's gonna look at that and go, so he's a detective. And it's like, sure, yeah, he's a detective, right? Whereas the first 10 minutes they consume is, the Hell's Reach smashed an orc heads in, beside guardsmen killing like hundreds of orcs, and it's like, oh, so it's the big army show, right? Like that's the difference, right? And it's like, well, so just have the first 10 minutes of Eisenhorn be, two dudes smashing into each other and then cut the Eisenhorn. And it's like, technically, yeah, you could do that, but like then it's just kind of false advertising. And like if somebody gets really big into like the first 10 minutes and then it cuts to like a guy in a room having a conversation, and then it kind of just like comes to start to fall apart, and everybody's like, well, when's the next really big battle gonna be, right? Whereas like you can stretch like a Space Marine battle book out to like about 10 episodes easy, right? Like there's plenty of just use the like Dog Soldiers, Tears of the Sun, like a ton of other like war and horror movies work where it's just, you have your group of characters, it could be like 5 Space Marines, 6 Space Marines, and like, 10 guardsmen, of the ones you actually care about, and have a bunch of fodder in the background, and then kill off your favorite characters down to like the last episode where there's only a couple left, right? And that's just like easy peasy, one season done, you did it, right? Because like odds of us actually getting more than one season are slim. Odds of us actually getting more than one television show are slim. It's just how we're trying to rely on Amazon to not screw this up. When look at, they had like the perfect Stargate reboot, like right there. If you don't know what Stargate is, go watch the original movie and then all the seasons of SG-1 and all the seasons of Atlantis. Fantastic show, beautiful. They had the opportunity to do it, and they're like, well, it would have just been for the old fans who there's like millions of. We didn't want to do it, and it's just like, why are you doing this to us, Amazon? So like, Henry Cavill's involved. That's the only reason I have any hope for this. Just any hope, right? And Space Marine 2 was really good, but like, are we gonna get a Space Marine 2, or are we gonna get the mobile cash-in, right? In Amazon's track record, it would be the mobile cash-in, right? So I really do have hope for this show, but to build a hobby, right? Once again, if you go to work with a coworker and you're like, "Hey, did you watch the Warhammer 40,000?" They're like, "Yeah, I gave it an episode," right? That's what most people are gonna do, right? So maybe with that one episode, they're either hooked or they aren't. The first episode is crucial because, let's say the other 60 million people continue with it and they watch all of Eisenhorn, and Eisenhorn's like that crime thriller drama that they were really interested in, and then like the last part's kind of like a big battle, and they go to the store and they're like, "Hey man, I want to get into Warhammer." And they're like, "Cool, yeah, you want to get into Warhammer 40,000? Of course. Start with a combat patrol." And they kind of look at that and they go, "Wow, there's like 20 dudes in that. That's like more dudes that fought in the entire show I just watched." It's both a good onboard and also a not so good onboard. It's like one of the problems with Andor, and I really did enjoy Andor, but like, imagine sitting down and watching Andor for the first time and not having any context to what wider Star Wars was. It's like, you don't even like know what the Death Star is. You don't even know the importance of like what any of the symbology throughout Andor is leading up to, right? It's kind of like looking at a big old field and then seeing a tree off in the distance and just only looking at that tree when there's so much more, right? So unfortunately, they're in a really hard proposition where they either choose to focus in on the tree and try to get people on board slowly, but then theoretically 20 million people who only watched the first episode aren't even going to really know what it's about. They're going to go, like, you're talking to your coworker at work and they're like, "Oh yeah, the detective show." And you're like, "Actually, I'm into the Big Army game." And they're like, "There's a Big Army game related to this?" Like, this is a real problem they have to overcome. So I think just going like Space Marine 2, like just go with a big battle, right, on a big planet, and then hyper focus on your characters you want to focus on. And it could be one battle out of the really big battle, right? But as long as you focus in on it, they should understand that big battle is happening, right? And then you can do, like, when people know that it's really popular now, assuming we get a season 2 and like new TV series, because they're already talking about doing an animated Death Watch TV show. So that's, hopefully that goes off really well. So this is a fantastic way, once more people know about it, to get people into it. This is a good show 2. This is not a good show 1. Good show 1 would be Hell's Reach. Good show 1 gets Nintendo Mom to understand that little Jimmy is talking about this, not something smaller, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I generally believe. Alrighty, thanks for listening. Also, remember to like, comment, subscribe. I would really appreciate all that. Alright, until next time.